welcome to episode 6 of the Moving Pictures podcast series. My name is Hugh and Sara. I'm the manager of Film Hub NI, which is part of the Film Audience Network from the BFI administering National Lottery funds. And I'm joined by my ever-present, brilliant colleague, Sarah Gunn-Smith. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Hugh.
How are you doing? You're going to tell us some more about the Moving Pictures podcast series?
I would love to tell you some more about the Moving Podcast
Drag
Pictures
on, then.
series. I will. Yes, Moving Pictures is a series of podcasts that you can access through our website, which are available on Spotify and iTunes and all that stuff, and also on YouTube on our channel, fully captioned. And what this series is kind of a response to what's been happening in terms of cinema closures and getting a lot more stuff online. It's for film exhibitors and maybe wider arts people doing stuff online, and you can dip into different topics from audience development to evaluation and to all sorts of things that cover online work. And we should say a big thank you to Northern Ireland Screen, who have funded this series of podcasts through the Department for Communities, and have been very supportive in helping us get exhibitors get online.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. So this edition of the Moving Pictures Programs podcast focuses on delivering online work and real life screening. So the COVID reality has meant that people are starting to think about online as a part and a string to their bow in independent cinema and in community cinema and so on, and engaging with audiences and delivering new audiences for the kind of films that they want to show. However, we are going to come back. We at Film Hub, and I wholeheartedly believe that there are many ways to watch a film, but the best way is in a dark room with lots of other people. We are going to come back, but the online world and the online presence for independent cinema will always be there, and will always be part of what we do from now on. So how can exhibitors engage meaningfully online, but still value and evaluate the in-person experience is what we're going to discuss today. And I'm delighted to be joined. We are delighted to be joined by Andi Jarvis of Eximo Marketing. Where are you dialing in from today, Andi?
Dialing in from Bangor, the Sunshine Coast, as it is not really known by anybody.
No.
The delights of North Down, where where we think we're better than the rest of Northern Ireland. That's us.
That's a fair summation, I think. There's no comeback to that one. Thank you very much for joining us. Just let us know what Eximo Marketing does. Just might be useful for the listeners.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. So Eximo is a marketing consultancy which does. I often describe it as the thinking bit at the beginning. So we're looking at getting marketing lined up, pointed in the right direction, talking to the right people with the right messages. I don't do so much of the sort of traditional agency services of doing the marketing for you, of writing the posts or creating the pictures, but making sure that the basics and the fundamental bits are right and in the right place. So I've been working with the Film Hub since I started, probably since a little bit before I started. So that's 3.5 years now. Yeah. Thank you for sticking me out for that long. There's not many people.
All right.
Not many people did.
We like you, really.
I did. Yeah, and I like you too. But yes, I work different. I'm not sort of sector specific. I think, to me, where you need the sector specific people tends to be in that delivery bit where they need to really get you and feel you. With the strategy bits that I do, I think as long as you're asking the right questions, and there's a benefit of working across different industries and sectors as well, in that you can bring different knowledge from, everyone's facing this pandemic together. So what are they doing in e-commerce that is applicable to exhibitions? What are sports clubs doing? Everyone's got similar problems. So that variety, I think, has been quite useful.
Excellent. I think today's discussion will be philosophical to a certain extent, because a lot of this will be kind of prediction and forecasting to a certain extent, and but also hopefully some kind of nuts and bolts things for groups to think about as things improve. I mean, we're recording this in February, so we don't really know quite how things are going to pan out over the next 9 months. So hopefully this will be a slightly more kind of discursive discussion around what is possible. So Andy, if want to get stuck into it, so I mean, I think a lot of people feel that there's a shift going on between real life, in-person stuff and online. Do you think it's an inevitable shift across? Or do you think kind of the experience of the last 9 months might mean actually real life becomes more valued?
My favorite line at the moment is, I don't know whether I'm living at work or working from home. It seems to be the experience that I'm having, and everyone's having at the minute. So, well, if you're in a professional services job where you have the benefit of being able to work from home, and while I believe that the sort of Zooms recording podcasts this way instead of sitting in the room with you, it's been a great crutch. And in some ways, it's also been able to open new and different ways of doing things. But I don't think it hasn't killed lots of things. If you look at so much has just moved online because it's had to do. But I don't think COVID has killed the high street. High street had challenges anyway, which has been sped up by COVID. But people still want to go to shops to go and buy things. And it's been great that we can watch films. We've been able to watch our favorite DJs play, and our bands have played. And I mean, maybe you might even forgive Gary Barlow and Ronan Keating for doing duets every Friday night and destroying the internet.
No, I don't know.
Because
No,
it's just
no.
it's not even forgivable. No.
There's a line you can cross. Like,
absolutely, we've got to have standards. But nobody's saying, oh well, just because I can watch my favorite artist do a solo in his bedroom with a guitar, that I never want to go to a gig again. Just because I can order a meal box from a restaurant and have it and put it together in my house, I'll never go to a restaurant again. Things have changed, but I think the demand is still there. That experience you get, and it doesn't matter how great your TV is, how much you've invested in surround sound, how dark you can make it, and whatever you can do in your own home. It's not the same as when you sit down. And I was talking about Jurassic Park the other day. Somebody asked on Twitter, what film are you so happy you saw in the cinema? And it was Jurassic Park. I just remember it was packed full. You couldn't move. You couldn't get a seat for ages, and you sat there watching. What? This was amazing. I think when did that come out? I must have been 15, 16 at the time.
1993.
No idea. Never seen it.
1993. I have to say, actually, the first film
93.
that I saw back in the cinema after the first closure was Jurassic Park, even though I've seen it a million times, and it was just so good to have that experience of being in the room again.
And is it a?
It is.
Sorry, Andy, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that collective experience is just. It's not just about the pictures moving in front of you. It's about the other people there who are with you. It's about some of those gasps that people have at certain points, and the TV advertising for horror films. The general way of doing it now is a couple of clips of the film, and then some clips of the audience responding to that film. And then, and that's how they advertise horror films. It's a collective experience. So, yes, look, this has been fantastic that people can keep watching films. It will add to what this film watching experience is, but I don't think it'll kill it.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the experience, obviously what we've been talking about, what does it mean online? How can you make, if you're running a small cinema or community cinema, I mean, there is no real full replication for the experience of being there, but what kind of tools, or is there anything you could think of that people could help give a kind of enhanced experience rather than just press and play on the screen and it goes ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the ways to think about this is the day or the time of the screening is not the time to start thinking about this. This only works if you do the pre-planning, much like if you're screening, something in real life. So if you were doing, there was a film hub in Dungannon, but they used to do screenings, and they get people to come dressed up for, in a relevant outfit for that. There's no reason why you can't try and recreate that communal type of approach. Not everybody's going to do it. Some people are going to be like, I'm not going to put a boiler suit on and sit here and watch Ghostbusters with you all.
Yeah.
But some people might. And if you look at what people are doing to, I put a suit on the other day to go to Tesco just because I haven't worn it, in a year. And you see people getting dressed up to take the bins out and posting pictures of that on social media. So people are bored. So giving them the option to join something that's a little bit bigger, why not? Give it a go. And I think the other things you can do, things like Zoom calls are pretty much ubiquitous now. Everybody knows a little bit about how to do them. So can you replicate the discussion afterwards? Can you get some of the talent from that film who, let's be honest, might not have ever traveled? You know, when you've done a lot of getting talent to get into, let's take them around and we'll put these people here and put them there to talk about the show. You get the ones who are willing to travel sometimes. You don't often get the person who's like, I'm not going to do that. You can get them now. They don't have to leave the sofa. They sit on the sofa and you've got a Zoom afterwards with 20 or 30 people who've just watched the film together. So, you know, you can look at elements that you can recreate from your in-person screenings, and also look at things that might even work better on this type of format, on a digital format. So, you know, I think doing Q&As with a big audience, it can be a little bit better sometimes. You know, you can get a wider audience of people who think, I can stay for that now, or I might dial into that. So I think that there's options there of things you can do, but it does take planning.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a veteran of many Q&As, I think, you know, they can work, and they can be brilliant. You know, they can be really interesting events and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of the people who stay sometimes just forgot to get out in time. And, you know, there's a kind of sense that, well, I'll stick around for the Q&A, or, you know, that sort of thing. And I think, you know, there's much more of a commitment in terms of going on, you know, going online, and I'm part of this Q&A and I want to find out more about it. And also, I suppose you've got a wider reach in terms of, you know, the people you can reach, and the people can then, you know, get to know about your community cinema or whatever it might be. I mean, I think that there's definite possibilities there. Just in terms of what makes it, how do you ask someone if they had a good experience? I mean, do you just, when you evaluate qualitatively like that, is it simply a matter of sort of asking for a couple of paragraphs, or asking for, you know, like 3 words that sum up your experience or something like that? Does that help?
Yeah, for me, less is more. I like the Net Promoter Score, and I think we've talked about this on a previous podcast, different series. And there's loads written about Net Promoter Score, NPS. If you Google Net Promoter Score or NPS, there's loads written about it. But effectively, it is a rating of 1 to 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. How much would you recommend this thing to a friend or a colleague? And 1 is no, 10 is yes. So 10 is the most, and then you get a score. And it's followed up by one simple question, which is, why did you give it that score?
Okay.
Now, what that gives you, it gives you qual and quant. So it gives you a set of numbers, so you can measure event 1 against event 2 against event 3, and so on and so forth. But the real value is in the paragraph that comes afterwards. So the general approach I take is, if someone leaves you a word or two, it's useful, it's interesting, you know, great film, or brilliant time, or, you know, bit early, something like that. It's useful. But the ones that you really want to pay attention to, the people who leave you a paragraph or 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs, or like, you know, I thought that your communication was brilliant beforehand, and I knew that I needed to get dressed up, but, you know, some examples would have been really handy if you could have sent some pictures of previous events you've done. All of those people who decide to go into the comments and leave you that really considered stuff, that's the digital equivalent of somebody coming up to you at the door on the way out and going, had the best time ever.
Yeah.
Here's what I really liked about it, and here's what you should change. And look, there's loads more you could do. You could start getting into lots of specific questions, but the benefit of Net Promoter Score is that it's really easy to get loads of information from, because you capture just the first one, even if they don't fill in the second bit. So if people just click 8 and then don't bother filling in the second question, you've still got the number. It's a really
you've
easy
got
thing.
some info.
Yeah, you've got something. And those people who do go on to leave you a little bit more, there's plenty you can take from that. So it's a really simple and powerful way of starting to capture it. So if you're not doing it, definitely have a look at Net Promoter Score as a simple way to get into doing that.
And it's basically 2. So you've got your scale, mark your scale, and then want to say anything else. That's
a free text question. Yeah. Just tell us anything else about it. Yep, that's it.
Right, okay.
That's it. Now you can go into asking different questions based on the score, and if they scored it 9. What you're really looking for in Net Promoter Score is people to give you 9s and 10s. There's a little bit of science behind it afterwards about understanding the difference between people who give you a 9 or a 10 and people who give you a 1 to 6. So 7's, 8 is, sorry, no, 1 to 5. 6, 7s, and 8s are just in the middle and nobody really cares about them. What you're looking for is the top scores or the bottom scores to find out what went wrong or what they really loved.
Okay.
But that's if you want to go into it at that level, at a basic level, just get the score of 1 to 10 and get the follow-up question. So you're getting the qual and the quant together. It's pretty straightforward to do. So even if you've not really done lots of research before or you're not really sure how to do it, you could tee it up as well. So you can tell people, we will be surveying you afterwards. It's 2 questions. I find as well when you send the question out, if you tell people, please fill in this, it takes 30 seconds to do. Yeah. We've all clicked on a survey to answer. It's a question 1 of 700. And you're like, oh God, no, why did I agree to this? It's a simple 2-question survey. Most people can fill it in less than 20 seconds, which is entirely true. And then you get that email and you go, oh yeah, 1. Oh. And then if you feel obliged to give a longer answer, you can do. So it's a really powerful tool. Really.
But it sounds ideal, really. And I'm very much a 6 person because I never want to be rude, but I never want to be too praiseworthy. You know what I mean? I'm just getting ignored.
Andy, I was going to just pick up. I mean, you've covered this a bit anyway when we're talking about planning and stuff. But how can a small film organization with small resources, perhaps volunteer led or whatever, engage online and still give a quality service? Now, a couple of things I was thinking of is just from chatting to some of our members and stuff that things like a one-click platform, so you don't have to sign up for 15 different platforms to watch a film and then engage in the conversation. So I think that's probably really important, and maybe simple things like a recorded introduction as well as Q&As. Is there anything else you would think in terms of a quality experience online?
I think that the making it easy. Friction is the language that they tend to use in marketing and economics at the minute, and reducing the friction for people to engage with it. And where you can use existing platforms, which Facebook, love it or hate it, tends to have the widest reach out of all platforms. Much more take up than Instagram, much higher take up than Twitter and places like that. But if you can find a platform where people are already there, then it's one less thing for them to do to join the discussion. I'm not so much talking about screening on Facebook, but if you want to have a discussion platform, you're not saying, all right, well, you need to create a username and then you've got to get a 16-digit password with commas, and no one's got time for that. So making it as easy as possible for people to join in. But I think if you look at any feedback you've got previously from your organization, and if you don't have it written down, what do people tell you at the door? So think about what that is that people value from your in-person experience and try and replicate some of that. So if people say, I come to this cinema once a month because you're friendly.
Yeah.
And how do you get that friendliness across? And is that the recorded intro to the film? If people come because they love the challenging content, well, how do you get them involved maybe in suggesting things for programming? I know we don't let the punters do the programming because that goes in a weird direction. But how can we get people's input into that process if they're coming for the challenging programming? So think about what it is that makes your screening organization special, and then try and bring some of that customer usage into what you do. And that's different for everybody, really.
Yeah, that's a very useful advice. We wanted to talk slightly about the idea of value. There is a lot of, if you do any research out there, there's a lot of think pieces in the cinema industry where it's either it's all dead or it's all going to be come back as normal, or I read one the other day about how the cinema advertising was going through the roof over the last couple of years, and I think they had their best year ever for cinema advertising sales. Which may be an annoyance to some of you that you have to sit through half an hour, 45 minutes of adverts now at the cinema. But at the same time, other people are saying, well, it's been on its way out for a while and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I think the question is, from some thinkers are thinking that the value of in-life sort of experience is going to be more than an online experience. So I think the question, what's the word I'm looking for? How do you manage that value in terms of a hierarchy. So our members are some of them are going to come back, but they're still going to do online stuff, but they're going to be doing in real life stuff. How do they manage that sort of value hierarchy, if you like?
Yeah, and I think to go back to the beginning of that question, there's an element of what's going to happen to cinema. And look, none of us really know, but I think my gut feeling is that the first 6 to 12 months isn't going to be a problem. If the rest of the world is even remotely like most of the people I speak to, I don't want to be in my house at all, day or night, for the next year. I just, as soon as the doors open to stuff, I'm going to be, I'm going to try and become an alcoholic if I can. I'm going to try and become a raging cinema buff. I'm going to go to every sporting event possible. I'm going to, the kids stuff down the road. People have just got the pent up demand for people to do stuff that isn't just a walk around the nearest park again is huge.
Yeah.
The interesting bit is keeping that going, because everyone's going to be coming back around at the same time. So that you've got to keep that going. And that's where you could almost be shambolic for the first 6 months and still get people coming in and giving you money.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be. You actually want to give that experience and really make sure that when the shakeout shakes out, you're still going to be the one where people want to keep coming. So how do you put that value in there? And I think if you look at the conference world, so business conferences, halls full of 500, 1,000 people, often paying thousands of pounds for a ticket, and that whole market disappeared. And then they all went online and started charging 200, 100 for a ticket, 50 pounds for a ticket, free tickets. They've destroyed all their value. And I've been involved in some conversations in that world where they're looking at how do they do the same thing. And I think what you have to remember is that if you don't value what you're doing, then nobody else is going to value it. So ticket pricing, the experience that you're going to put on for people is all part of that proposition. So there's a tendency when people are worried to want to cut prices. And I would say, as much as I can, hold your price at what it was before.
Yeah.
Don't, because if you were a £5 a ticket and you suddenly say, right, we just want people to come back, it's £1 a ticket. What happens is people come for £1. You put your prices up to a £5 for the next one, be like, oh, they've put the prices up. Nobody remembers the fact that a year ago you were £5. It's like you were £1 last time I came. So I would say, hold your price and value what you do, first of all, and then think about that in real life experience. What are people going to get from being there? Is it just the fact that we can actually sit next to somebody else and and cough on them and things like that, that we're not allowed to do at the minute? But what are those things around that experience? And then if you are going to screen the same film online, what's that? It's kind of the cinema model all over again, isn't it? What's the lag going to be? Are you going to hold it back a little bit? How long are you going to do it? Are you going to give the people who come the option to watch it again for free? I think you just have to look at. You almost need to draw two circles on a bit of paper and say, right, here's all the things we want the in-person event to be, and here's all the things that we want to give to the digital audience. And then just when you start to look at it on a bit of paper and to go, well, actually, do we need to move that one into here? What do you get for both? And just by writing it down, and it is one of those things where writing it down makes a big difference. You start to look at what are all the things you can offer and which pot should you put them in. And that way you can start to see, because it is that the line moves for every organization depending on what film you're screening, what your brand is, how often you're going to be doing it. What audience you've carried over from doing digital screenings as well, because if you've got if you're based in in Belfast and you've had a huge audience coming from London, you don't need to do a huge amount to try and get that London audience to come to watch the in-person stuff. So you can actually be slightly different. So if all you've done is just move your in-person audience, everyone from within a 5-mile radius is just moved online. You need to look at that slightly differently, because you do have a big problem that you might affect your ticket sales. So you just need to look at what have you got to play with, and then which pot do you want to put it in. That's the exercise I'd be doing.
Yeah, that's really useful. Very, very useful advice.
Yeah, that kind of segues nicely into the next question about online audiences and of how do you turn online audiences who like geographically are able to and physically able to, how do you get them to your venue if they've only been engaged, if they're new to your organization online, how do you turn that into an in real life experience?
So it it's a slower process than you would generally imagine. So there's a tendency to go, that person watched a couple of films with us online from the comfort of their sofa. Therefore, they should turn up on Friday night to come and watch the screening that we're doing. Now we're back in person.
Yeah.
And, I can see the thought process, but there's a few steps you need to bring them to get them coming there, to get them coming and coming again and again and again. Often the levers you can pull are price related. Would you be interested in coming for a reduced discount ticket to come along to an in-person event? I'm wary of doing price promotions, especially in organizations where every penny counts, right? If you're a community cinema, you don't have the capacity to say, well, let's just do half price tickets for these 50 people just in case they might come. But if you think of the approach, if you have to build that relationship with them, so your connection with them is very transactional at the minute. You've put this thing on, they bought it, watched it, and that's the beginning and the end of it. And you need to move it onto a more value relationship. And again, I'm wary this sounds like vague marketing bollocks, but
no, it makes sense.
But effectively, they've bought something from you and you use that thing, and that's it. So while you think there's this deep and meaningful relationship with them, when credits went up, your relationship with that person ended for them, and you have to kind of keep bringing that back and bringing that trust to them. So the first step for me is try to get them onto your social media channels. That's a soft thing, which you can be doing throughout every screening that you're doing. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, wherever it is, and keep pushing that message. Keep trying to get people into those things, because the more engaged they are to start with, the more they're going to move up that process with you. And then, again, it's a little bit of a longer approach, but make sure that they're fully aware of everything that you're doing. So as we get the hopefully clear guidance from the government, hopefully we'll get guidance that says our plan is to reopen these things, even if it's 4 months away. At least we'll have a date to work to. Should A and B happen, we'll have. That's when you need to start ramping it up and building that relationship, sending them emails if you can, talking to them more on social media, trying to get them a little bit more than just, oh, we've watched the film. Can we get them into doing something else? Can you talk to them about, is there any volunteering options? Just anything like that might get people to be, oh, I am a little bit more interested. And it's the people who are engaging in that who are the key ones to go, right, these people are engaging, let's get them in. But the key thing to remember is not everybody is going to want to migrate. So if you've got 50 people who've been regularly watching, if 10 to 15 of them come to your in-person screenings, that's brilliant. So don't worry about the 30 or 40 who didn't come. Focus on the 10 who did, because in my experience of the community cinema, a lot of people come a lot of the time. So if you get 10 people coming once, you'll probably get 8 of them coming again and again and again and again and again. And that makes a big difference. So, focus on the ones who are showing intent is the key thing. So I think with everything with it, don't wait until you open the doors on the first night and go, where are all those people who've been watching online?
About it,
Well, once we start getting the smoke signals that, all right, schools are opening, so we're hoping we can reopen cinemas in a month, 2 months. That's when you need to start going.
So, I mean, I think it's that sort of early planning, and I think all of the feedback we've got from all of our members, and maybe this is true in terms of Access Cinema down south and across the water as well, is that people want to engage with this. They're interested in doing it, but it seems, I think from what you're saying, that there are tools and there are ways and strategies to kind of actually properly engage with this and create a tool. But it's also about having realistic ambitions. As you say, 10 people, if 8 come along, that's a win. That's a huge win, especially in the numbers you're talking about. I wanted to ask a sort of slightly broader question, just and this, isn't necessarily about cinema, but we think that cinema plays a part in this. I mean, how do you feel? We talk about the high street, and we talk about the sort of the what's going on in the high street. And I mean, I think speaking of the death of the high street is premature, as you mentioned earlier on. But I think there's definitely a lot of changes and challenges out there in terms of retail, in terms of large conglomerations, all that sort of stuff. I mean, do you see cinema and like that kind of experience economy actually playing a role in rejuvenating city centres and high streets and villages and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of research that is out there about spending money on experiences as opposed to things improves your quality of life generally. And while we've all been locked in our houses, we can still spend on, Amazon. Jeff Bezos' wealth has gone from 11 trillion gazillion to 11 times 6 whatever it is, because we've all been able to order loads of stuff. And God bless him in his retirement. I'm sure he'll be hard up, but we've all been able to order as much stuff as we all haven't. Lots of people have been able to order as much stuff as they want from Amazon. The DPD guy bangs on your door, you deliver it, and you go, "Oh, this is lovely. This is lovely." Is anybody feeling great at the minute? No, everyone's feeling shit.
Yeah.
And we can have as much physical possessions as we like, and you're like, "Oh, typical socialist and whatever," but look, we've got as many physical possessions as we want, and everybody's miserable. People want experiences. That's the rich tapestry of life, is being with other people. We're a social bunch of animals, right? And we like to spend time with people. So we have to decide. I think there's a bigger discussion to have as to what sort of society we want in the country. And I don't mean in terms of what does the high street mean and what does city centres mean? Because people talk about, we need to sort out the rates. And we do, but I think if we sort out the rates, we're looking here, and actually we need to look here and go, what do we want from our high streets? What do we want them to be? Do we want, I'm in Bangor here, Belfast's 20 miles, 15 miles down the road. And there's Hollywood in between. Do we need everything on each of those high streets, or should we have different themes for different places? And there's lots of discussions to be had, and then you can work out the rates afterwards to incentivize those things. But in the broader scheme of things, we need things to do, not just places to buy things. And cinema, ticks both boxes, because you can buy, expensive stuff, drinks, popcorn as well. But we need things to do. And cinema brings people together. It is, it's a leveler. It's a great, if you talk about kids and their younger experiences and that sort of, going to the cinema is a safe place, you can let your kids go to, and they feel grown up and they go off on themselves. And Sarah's done the Curzon documentary, and you read some of the stuff about that, and people's memories of first films in cinema. It's one of those things that you just remember. And I don't think this is old people shouting at clouds going, "Oh, I wish it was better in our day." I think these are experiences that need to be repeated. And cinema, the death of cinema has been predicted since the 80s,
since the 50s at least.
It's the 50s at least, and it's still going strong, because it is more than just. It's more than the sum of its parts. It's not just watching a film on a screen, because we can do that in rooms in our houses or on these little devices in our hands. It's not the same. So there's an experiential element that people want to tap into, and I think that'll keep it going and make it stronger over the next few years.
It is interesting, because I think people talk about nostalgia and golden age of cinema and all that sort of stuff, but actually, I remember a lot of the cinemas in the 80s were horrible places to go. Physically, nobody had spent any money on them. Things broke, they were cold, all that sort of stuff. But it was the experience that I was after at the time, and so it sort of made sense. It's not, it's not a golden age in the sense of it was lovely. It's more the golden age of that's the experience we cherish, I suppose, in the past. I think it's very interesting, and I think as things develop, we're talking on the day that the High Street Task Force has been announced by the executive, and it'd be interesting to see whether they've asked anyone from entertainment venues or arts and culture or creative industries to actually be part of that, as opposed to simply looking at retail.
Yeah, and I think that there's an interesting subplot to that in Northern Ireland, in that, and I kind of tiptoe around this carefully, despite having lived here for a number of years. I'm always fully aware that you can't criticize anywhere when you're not quite from there. But the nighttime economy, I think, is the general term for it. It is frowned upon here in a way that it isn't. If you look at the way the nighttime economy is central to the success of cities like Liverpool, Newcastle, Manchester, London, Edinburgh. There's no reason why nighttime economy couldn't be a thing like that here, other than the fact that the people in power frown upon anyone who's out after 1 a.m. So cinema isn't necessarily that part of it, but it's almost the start. It's the starting pistol of a night out is a trip to the cinema, which comes around with other things. And the nighttime economy needs to be looked at in the round, and cinema absolutely is part of that.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Well, look, thank you very much, Andy. Sarah, was there anything else you wanted to ask on that?
No, I was just going to say that's a very positive conversation. Obviously, we're
Yeah.
looking at things. Our fundamental job is to get people in the cinema, as we've said. But there is online stuff happening. It's here to stay, and it's how nobody knows what this is going to look like. In a year, 2 years down the time. But we just need to learn to live alongside online, and it's like living alongside COVID, isn't it? So can we can the cinemas live along online, and it's.
I mean, cinema is also a money-driven business.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is interesting that, it seems, people who don't know cinema sort of assume that, well, if you just take everything online, then what's the problem? You just sell it there. But actually, you're not going to make the same amount of money. You're not going to say, you're not really going to. And it's interesting that Bond, rather than take the reporters' money that they were offered to put it online, are holding out for cinema, because that's the experience. It's going to see the first, the Bond movie in the cinema is part of an experience that you will pay top dollar for. Not me, I'm not a Bond fan, but there's a sense there.
Plenty will.
But at the same time, organizations. Sorry, Andy, but organizations like Netflix. Netflix have been releasing films and actually have been quite kind of supportive of cinema during this period of time. And so I think these relationships are going to be quite interesting. And I mean, from a marketing perspective, and having an expert like you is pretty useful, and how you see it's not a black and white kind of thing. It's a complicated development.
It definitely is. And you look at, talking about blockbusters for a minute, but one of the most difficult things that we have at the minute is, how do you pick something to watch? Right. And I mean, look, it's a first world problem, but if you've got Netflix, Amazon Prime, YouTube, social media, you've got a lot of shit being piped at you. And how do you decide what you're going to watch from that? Now, one of the key drivers, I suspect, for people sitting down to watch a film with a family on the telly is something that they've recognized because they've seen a T-side on a bus, or they know it's been on at the cinema and they just didn't get there. That's why you pick that film to watch. And, from a marketing point of brand building, being in the cinema builds the brand. This is a sign of quality. Nobody really wants to make, the straight to TV movie. Was never a sign of quality, was it? Right. So being in the cinema is still that gold standard of quality. And I suspect the people at Netflix and Amazon, while they want to shorten that cinema only window,
the window,
will be fully aware of the value of having something shown on the big screen to people dialing in to watch that on their service. So from that point of view, from a brand building marketing perspective, I absolutely think cinema has a future. And I think, sort of to kind of close off with the audience that we have here who aren't looking at that type of thing, you're going, all right, this sounds all so big. And so you're like, start small. What can you offer that only you can offer? Or to your area, to your group of people. I always think of Portrush when I'm doing these, and Fran up at Portrush, and it's like, they've got this beautiful venue, they've got a really enthusiastic bunch, it's friendly as hell. And it's like, I love going to the cinema. I can't, to watch blockbusters. I can't ever swear that I've been to a friendly cinema before. I've been to places where you've been shipped through and told to shut up and hurry up and charge the fortune for stuff. But it doesn't take away from it. I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
They're friendly. How do you get that friendliness across to bring people in? So just think, what is it that's special about us? And make that part of your experience of bringing people in. So, it's great that Bond's waiting for the cinema release. Let's all go and see it when it comes out. You don't have to be showing Bond, though. Think of what you do and how you do it really, really well, and just do more of that and just keep doing more of that. That's how you build the experience.
Well, Andy, that is sage advice, and thank you as ever for your time. We always like to hear from you. And it's our members always really appreciate your advice as well. So, thank you. I hope the weather stays fair for you in Bangor there. And
it's helping my beard grow anyway. So, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.